Hey guys, what's up? Self-Dev, welcome back to another video. In this video, I wanted to talk about stereotypes and the possibility, at least in my opinion, that stereotypes aren't necessarily a bad thing. So, usually what I find in mainstream culture is that a stereotype is considered something bad, something that you shouldn't have, you shouldn't rely on, you shouldn't be closed-minded about a stereotype being um, untrue, basically. So, what a stereotype is basically is an overgeneralized, oversimplified idea. It's like a shortcut to assuming what a particular person or thing and the role it has or its behaviors or what it's supposed to do or not do. So, for example, if you're from England and um, you travel to Italy or somewhere, they might stereotype you as someone who drinks a cup of tea every day or something like that. So that could be an example of a stereotype. Um, this is more of a tame example. It's not really harmful or destructive, but maybe the particular individual might take offense to that, saying, I don't drink tea. Why did you assume I drink tea just because I'm in England? Like, that's such a stereotype for you to make. Um, so, in this light-hearted example of a stereotype, um, it's not really that bad a thing because if that person you're meeting in Italy as an English person makes a stereotype that you drink tea, then what they're trying to do is they're trying to like take shortcuts. They're trying to please you basically. They're trying to be like, well, I need something to I need something to have an idea of what this person likes. Like, I can't be like completely open-ended and just be like asking them questions, and just essentially not assuming anything. Because sometimes we have to assume some things. We have to assume that the food we purchase in shops aren't poisoned. We have to assume that um, the person we marry or date isn't a murderer. We need to just make assumptions, otherwise we're just too radically open-minded and we just can't really live properly without being like paranoid or just like accepting we don't know anything, because that will just be a really unhealthy way to live. So a stereotype is basically a system of assumptions, shortcuts. So we save time, we save energy, we save emotional stress. Um, so that's one reason why I don't think it's all bad. Let's think of a more negative way of stereotyping. So let's stereotype using a today relevant example of Russians. So say you stereotyped a Russian as automatically hating on Ukrainians, wanting them denazified or whatever, of supporting what Russians are doing in Ukraine and all of that. Now, just it's easy to make this stereotype because when we read like in the news like, oh, Russia has done this, Russia had said this, it's I don't like this because it kind of assumes that Russia, the entire country, is saying this and agreeing with this when there are like millions and millions of people in Russia, and the chances of all of them agreeing or even knowing what's actually going on, which clearly seems to be happening, like they are being misinformed because of Russian propaganda and the I forget the fancy term, but there's a term that makes them like one-sided in terms of news. So they're like limiting what news sources Russians are able to access. So um, when you're stereotyping, you need to make sure that you are aware that when you make the stereotype, while that's a kind of template, a psychological template, if that makes sense, you need to be aware that that's not going to be applicable to every single person or thing in that demographic. Like there will be up to maybe half of that demographic that will not fit the stereotype that you have put into your mind. So you can use it as a stereotype, but you have to be really open-minded that that stereotype might not be accurate. And a lot of the times it won't be. Stereotypes exist because they have actually happened, like they have actually been true a lot of the time, but just not all the time. So, at least for someone like me, I'm going to just keep stereotypes to myself, especially if they're negative. But it helps me prepare for um, potentially threatening situations or people. Um, and if I wasn't to realize that, then I could potentially put myself or other people in danger. So, pretty much stereotypes there to protect us or help us in some way. So, yeah, they pretty much prepare us. Again, there's I think racism is a form of stereotype, a more extreme stereotype. And pretty much if we can change the stereotype, we can eliminate like racism, xenophobia, and things like that. So once the stereotype's changed, we no longer have that fear. And while, like, for example, racism is still very much a thing right now, it will still take more time to actually die off. Um, I'm not exactly sure where racism really came from. I think maybe black people were more resistant to, as humanity broadened out into the world, they were more resistant to broadening out, and they only broadened out kind of later on, I think, and then the white people weren't really used to them. They kind of saw them as a threat, like they might overpower them. And if you're aware of the spirodynamic system, then this might sound like it resonates very much with Stage Purple. And I think racism and pretty much judging of other originates in Purple. And pretty much everyone still has this judging of other to some extent that is still comes from Stage Purple. So even though I like to think that most of us aren't racist, we don't judge people in the way society kind of views it, if that makes sense. We still judge people somewhat because we only experience our own experience. we don't experience what it's like to be someone else. So pretty much, even if you don't like to admit it, we kind of assume that the way we see the world and we operate in the world is the best way, and others who operate in other ways aren't the best. Although I do think humanity is kind of moving on slowly towards not judging anyone for anything, but that's very radical. That's something too far of a reach for most of people to handle. A little bit of a tangent there. Sorry about that. So yeah, stereotypes just aren't all bad. They can be useful, like as I said, like a template, but just like hold it at one side and just realize that while this is true a lot of the time, it's not true all the time. And we need to make assumptions, as I've said, like we need to assume that not everyone's out to murder us or steal from us, but they could. Like, we don't know, but if we live like that, if we were paranoid like that, or we were like just like too open-ended, then we just wouldn't live that like properly like that. So I think that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, click the bell. Please share with who you think might find this video useful, and I'll see you in the next video. Hope you have an awesome day and an amazing life.